Hello there. Well, today I'm going to talk about something I haven't owned since about 1992, but I shall come to that in a minute. I wanted to give a sound check out, name check, call it what you will, for my good friend Gav, who has a site on YouTube, a channel on YouTube called Gav Axeman Spins. What I would say is, go and look at it. You will enjoy it. If you are a vinyl fan, you will love it. I think he specialises pretty much in the 80s, things like the Smiths, Bowie, 70s on, Oasis, lots of other groups, and some people I've never even heard of. So it's always an education to watch it. He's a lovely man. He's great presentational style, and it's just so engaging. Oh, and the other thing is, he's a doppelganger for Dave Wakeling. You know, that was the singer in The Beat. You must remember The Beat. And if you put them side by side, you wouldn't. Well, he's much younger than Dave Wakeling is now, of course. But I know various people like that are doubles for people in the music business. I better not say any more about that. Anyway, a friend of mine in Canada, Craig, he wrote to me and told me about he'd been to this estate sale. He'd also been to a couple of garage sales as well, and various other things. Looking for LPs. I'm loath to call them vinyls, and he was telling me how they've gone sort of like silly prices. People wanting for something that, say, over here years ago, is pretty much the same here as well. People say, 20 pence for that, or this, that and the other. And he'd asked this one lady how much she wanted each of these LPs, and she wanted 10 Canadian dollars each. Anyway, he told her it was too much. He went on somewhere else and bought a stack of albums at quite reasonable prices. So, and he bought some CDs as well. So he was very happy about that. Oh, I should say about Gav's site, he also covers CDs as well. In fact, on his latest video, instead of having vinyl, see, I'm slipping into it now. Instead of having LPs at the back, he's got CDs behind him. So check it out. I really do recommend it. He's a lovely guy, really entertaining. Anyway, going on from Craig buying up LPs in Canada, and he was also mentioning in this one estate sale, there's room there with all these computers from the early 80s, no monitors, and things like Commodores and Sinclair Spectrums and all sorts of things like that. So he was asking if anybody else ever bought these things back in the day. Well, I have to say that I went down that rabbit hole, and yes, I did buy a lot of this stuff. So I decided to write back to him and tell him what I'd actually bought, and I will tell you in a moment the history of my dipping my toe into microcomputers. He mentioned the fact, as I say, that there were no monitors with these things, and I said, well, at the time you could use an old CRT television, portable television, which in the early 80s a lot of people did, and I think the Commodore and the VIC-20, which was its smaller brother, accepted those anyway. And it also the programs, the games, fed in by tape, by cassette tape, and made a horrendous noise, these things did, when they were loading up. Anyway, I went down this rabbit hole, and many of my friends sort of said, oh, you need to get a Commodore, you need to get a Commodore, but it was a bit too expensive for me, so I didn't. So I saw an advert in the newspaper or whichever in Birmingham, and a shop called the Typewriter Centre. So it takes you back, doesn't it? The Typewriter Centre, and they were selling these Sinclair Spectrums, the ZX81, which was a forerunner of that. That was a black and white thing. Came before. I'd not been interested in that, but the Spectrum, I was interested in that, and it was quite pricey in its own way for the time, and it had a rubbery keyboard, which was absolutely awful for typing. So I wasn't too keen on that anyway. And it had a silly little printer as well, that you had to have special paper in it, and it was like grey paper, and oh, it was awful, and it smelt funny as well. Mine came with 16k of memory, but I managed to expand it over a period of time to 48k. A lot of these things you could do by, it was mail order, and certainly if you bought the memory from Sinclair, or you had to send it away, and God alone knows how long it would take to get the flipping computer back, because they weren't exactly great in terms of service. Sinclair, anyone that remembers at that time, I changed the case to a make called Fuller, which was there weren't rubbery keys, but it was more like a typewriter. That, but lighter. That was very good, and I think it was a firm in Liverpool that used to do them. I can't remember how much I paid for that. Had a much better response to it though. Then let me see what I wrote back to, and I'll give you the info there. Yes, I used the tapes. The tapes took ages to load, which were a pain. Then a few years later, I didn't bother with the micro drives that Sinclair developed. This little thing like that, and they're little cartridges, a little bit like if you imagine a mini disc, but smaller and thinner. And the flipping things were always failing, like a lot of things with Sinclair did. I didn't bother with the quirky micro drives, but I bought an Opus disk drive that was 3.5-inch discs that went into it, that were popular at that time. And with a cable, I managed to add a 5.25 floppy disk. Seems funny using that term now. It is another century. I spent loads of money over a period of a few years acquiring this, that and the other, gadgets from any manner of company. So there's a company called Romantic Robot, and they sold this device. You put it on the back of the Spectrum, you played a game, you could take a snapshot of it, and it wasn't very popular with a lot of software companies, because you could actually pinch the game if you'd borrowed it from a friend, so that was not a good thing. Then came the magazines. Sinclair User, which I had. There was another magazine called ZX Computing, and there's a couple of little bits by me in there, probably, very small bits, if you ever come across an issue of that. I amassed loads of games. In fact, I still had it all until 1992, and then I sold it all, apart from the magazines. Nobody was interested, so I had to take them to the tip and get rid of them. And this was at the time that we were getting ready, trying to sell the house and move on somewhere else. One of many moves. So they had to go. But I've got them on disc as well now, the magazines. What else did I write to him? Clive Sinclair was an innovative man, but he was not good at marketing, and his customer service left a lot of people frustrated. In the end, the business ran into trouble, and Alan Sugar, now Lord Sugar, bought them out. That lasted a few years under the Amstrad name. I also had a computer called a Dragon computer. That lasted a couple of years, and there were other more sophisticated things. So the market dropped out for them. That was a clone, apparently, of a Tandy TRS 80 or something like that. Then, whilst I was in Watford, a friend of mine in Bushey in Hertfordshire, he gave me this computer, this little mini computer thing called an Oric, but unfortunately there was no flipping games for it. I couldn't get the software, and the company just folded. There was no software support, so that went to the wall. The next thing that I ended up with was a thing called a Tutung, and I think that actually had a monitor built in, if I remember right. I had that for maybe about 6 months, and then my brother-in-law sold me this computer, this XT PC, and that's how I started off with PCs, etc. It was a little bit frustrating because it was discs that were loading this thing, and it had a very small hard drive on it, so that was really no good to me. And of course, my dear wife was very glad when I got rid of all these things and made me promise never to buy any computers again. She didn't succeed because, of course, I've had umpteen PCs, etc., etc. since then. So it never stops, I suppose. The world turns around. Anyway, that's that. Let me know about your experiences with microcomputers, whether you went down the Commodore route, the Sinclair route, whether you had a BBC computer. I've never had one of those. Far too expensive for me at the time anyway. Love to hear from you. Love to read your comments, and I always try and reply to them if I possibly can. If you haven't subscribed, please see about subscribing. Then you won't miss any of the videos at all. Okay, have a great day. Bye for now.